Imagine for a second that your body is a high-performance car. You've got the engine, the transmission, the wheels, everything looks perfect from the outside. But one day, you're driving down the highway and the alternator just vanishes.
The battery stops charging, the lights dim, the radio cuts out, and eventually, the spark plugs stop firing.
And the car doesn't just slow down, it dies. Complete shutdown.
That is the terror of the first few months with adrenal insufficiency. It's that realization that the automatic system that keeps you alive, the system that manages your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your ability to stand up without fainting, is broken. And the manual override is you. You are now the alternator. It is, and that's why we're talking about this article from My Adrenal Life today. It's titled, "There's Hope, Life with Adrenal Insufficiency Can Still Be Full, Meaningful, and Beautiful." Because when you get that diagnosis, whether it's Addison's disease or secondary adrenal insufficiency, the first feeling isn't hope. It's that the walls are closing in.
Right, because you're suddenly told that stress, something unavoidable in modern life, could literally kill you. The article mentions the season of overwhelm. Is that what people are really dealing with? Just fear?
It's fear mixed with a complete loss of trust in your own body. But what I love about this piece is that it refuses to stay in that fear. It acknowledges it, sure. It says, yes, the unpredictability is real. But then it pivots to this radical idea that you can have a real life that isn't defined by your worst days.
But let's be the devil's advocate for a second. We're talking about a condition where your body doesn't produce cortisol. To the average listener, cortisol is the stress hormone. We're usually trying to lower it. We're drinking matcha and meditating to get rid of it. Why is missing it such a catastrophe?
That's the biggest misconception. In pop culture, cortisol, the bad guy. In biology, cortisol is the fuel. It's the ignition. Without cortisol, your blood vessels lose tone, so your blood pressure bottoms out. Your liver can't release stored sugar, so you go hypoglycemic. If you encounter a virus or even emotional shock and you don't have cortisol to buffer it, your body goes into what's called an adrenal crisis. It's shock, organ failure, and death, potentially within hours.
Okay, so the stakes are incredibly high, which makes the claim in this article that people with AI are traveling, camping, running businesses seem almost reckless. How are they doing that without crashing that car we talked about?
They're doing it through what the article calls intentionality. And this is where we get into the nuts and bolts of the new normal. The text explicitly says, healing with AI isn't about going back to who you were. If you try to live your old life with your old reckless energy expenditure, you will crash. But if you learn the rules of the new engine, you can go almost anywhere.
Let's break down those rules. The article mentions work first. It lists everything from full-time jobs to running businesses. But realistically, if you have a condition where fatigue is a primary symptom, how do you hold down a 9 to 5?
It's about accommodations and pacing. In the US, for example, adrenal insufficiency is recognized under the ADA. That means you might need a flexible start time because your cortisol takes longer to kick in during the morning. Or you might need a temperature-controlled environment because heat drains cortisol faster than almost anything else.
Heat? Really?
Huge trigger. When you sweat, you lose sodium. In primary Addison's, you're already fighting to keep sodium because you lack another hormone called aldosterone. So a hot warehouse job, probably not a good fit. But an office job with air conditioning, absolutely doable.
The article lists specific adjustments: pacing, breaks, hydration. It sounds a lot like the spoon theory. Are you familiar with that?
The spoon theory is gospel in the chronic illness community. It was coined by Christine Miserandino. The idea is that a healthy person has unlimited spoons, unlimited energy units. You drop a spoon, who cares? Grab another. A person with AI wakes up with maybe 12 spoons. A shower costs 1. Making breakfast costs 2. A stressful meeting at work? That might cost 4.
And once you're out?
You're out. If you borrow from tomorrow, you start tomorrow with fewer spoons. The article touches on this brilliantly when it says, they don't burn energy on things that don't matter. That's spoon theory in action. You become an economist of your own energy.
So let's talk about the most energy-expensive thing humans do, exercise. The article has this phrase I highlighted, movement becomes partnership, not punishment. That feels like a direct shot at the no pain, no gain culture.
It is. And medically, it has to be. High-intensity interval training, CrossFit, sprinting, that spikes cortisol demand. In a healthy person, the adrenal glands just pump out more juice. In a person with AI, the demand spikes, the supply isn't there, and they crash, sometimes hard.
So they can't exercise.
No, they absolutely can. The article lists hiking, swimming, lifting, but the mindset shifts. You're not trying to beat your body into submission, you're listening to it. If you're lifting weights and you start to get that specific low cortisol shake or nausea, you stop immediately. You don't push through the burn because the burn might be a crisis coming up.
It's interesting because we have historical examples of this being managed at the highest level, right? I mean, John F. Kennedy.
The most famous case, and actually a complicated one. JFK had Addison's disease, diagnosed in 1947. He was president of the United States while having non-functioning adrenal glands. He traveled, he managed the Cuban Missile Crisis, talk about stress, and he played touch football.
So he's the poster child for you can do anything.
Yes and no. He is proof that AI doesn't affect your intellect or your capacity to lead. But we also have to be honest. He was in significant pain. He had a team of doctors, and he took a cocktail of medications, including testosterone and massive doses of hydrocortisone, to stay upright. The My Adrenal Life article is more grounded for the average person. You don't need a medical team in the White House basement. You just need preparation.
That preparation piece, the article mentions stress dosing. This was new to me. I thought you just took your pill in the morning and you were good.
That's the difference between surviving and thriving. Your body naturally produces more cortisol when you're stressed. If you have AI, you have to mimic that manually. If you break a leg, you need a massive dose immediately. But even smaller things, a root canal, a funeral, a final exam, might require a stress dose or an updose.
So you have to be constantly calculating the emotional weight of your day.
Exactly. You become a biohacker. The article says, they learn their bodies, they notice patterns. You learn that a fight with your spouse might require an extra 5 milligrams of hydrocortisone. You learn that a flight across time zones requires a completely new dosing schedule to match your circadian rhythm.
That brings us to the travel section. The article insists people with AI still explore and make memories, but the logistics sound terrifying. They carry injections. What is that about?
That's the Solu-Cortef emergency injection. It's a literal lifesaver. If you are vomiting, say you get food poisoning in Mexico, you can't keep your pills down. If you can't absorb cortisol, you will go into crisis and die. So you have to inject it into your muscle. Carrying that kit isn't a burden, though. The article reframes it beautifully. It says adventure doesn't disappear, it just becomes intentional.
It's like carrying a parachute. It doesn't mean the plane is going to crash, but you can enjoy the flight knowing you have it.
Spot on. And that leads to the psychological component, which I think is the strongest part of this piece. It talks about the difference between surviving and living. And point number 4 is they protect their mental health.
It mentions processing grief. Why grief? You're still alive.
Because you are mourning your healthy self. You're mourning the version of you that could pull an all-nighter without consequences. The version of you that didn't have to wear a medical alert bracelet. The article acknowledges that. It says, healing isn't about going back to who you were. If you stay stuck looking in the rearview mirror, trying to be the person who had unlimited spoons, you will be miserable. Acceptance is the gateway to the beautiful life the title promises.
I want to circle back to something the article lists under people with AI still laugh, love, celebrate. It lists fall in love, build families. Is there a biological barrier there? Does AI affect that?
It's a valid question. Adrenal insufficiency often comes with other hormonal issues, thyroid problems, sometimes ovarian failure in women if it's autoimmune. But generally, yes, people with AI have children. Pregnancy requires very careful management because the baby needs cortisol too, and the stress of labor is essentially the biggest stress dose event of a life. But it happens all the time. That's why the article is so insistent on this point. AI changes your pace, not your identity.
It changes your limits, not your ability to experience joy. That's a powerful line.
It is. And look at someone like Helen Reddy.
The sinner. I am woman?
The very same. She had Addison's disease. She lost a kidney and an adrenal gland early on, and the other one failed. She lived with this condition for decades while touring, performing, and becoming a feminist icon. If she had let the diagnosis define her as sick, we wouldn't have that anthem.
That's incredible. I had no idea. It really reinforces the idea that this is an invisible illness. You look at Helen Reddy or JFK or even just a coworker, and you'd never know they are manually operating their life support system every few hours.
And that invisibility is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you can pass as normal. On the other, when you say, I need to sit down right now or I'm going to collapse, people might think you're just being dramatic. That's why the article emphasizes community. No one does AI alone. You need people who get it.
Let's talk about that community aspect. The article mentions adjusting without guilt. That feels huge, the guilt of saying no.
It's the guilt of cancellation. You plan a dinner party, but 2 hours before your energy crashes, you have to cancel. If you don't have a community, whether that's online support groups or just educated friends and family, that guilt will eat you alive. The successful thrivers described in the text are the ones who can say, I need to rest, and not feel like they're failing as a human being.
So if we zoom out, what is the big idea here? We have a serious, life-threatening medical condition, but the text claims life can be beautiful. Is that just toxic positivity, or is there something real there?
I don't think it's toxic positivity because it doesn't deny the hardship. It doesn't say AI is a gift. It sucks. But it forces a kind of wisdom. When you have limited energy, you stop wasting it on petty drama. You stop working yourself to death for a boss who doesn't care. You become incredibly present because you know how fragile the balance is. The beauty comes from the clarity. You strip away the noise and you focus on what actually matters. Connection, purpose, simple joys.
It's almost like because the quantity of your energy is limited, the quality of it has to increase.
That is perfectly said. You upgrade the quality. You become a connoisseur of your own life.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on the medical disclaimer at the bottom. It says, always consult your endocrinologist. Why is that relationship so tricky? I've heard patients say doctors don't always get the daily struggle.
It's a tension in the field. Thomas Addison described this in 1855, and for a long time, the goal was just keep them alive. Today, the goal is quality of life, but many doctors are trained on the crisis, the numbers, the blood tests. They might not understand that while your blood work looks fine, you feel like you've been hit by a truck every day at 4 p.m. That's why patients have to advocate. They have to say, I'm surviving, but I'm not living. Help me adjust my dosing timing. The hope in this article relies on you taking the wheel, not just sitting in the passenger seat of your medical care.
So to the person listening who might have just gotten this diagnosis or maybe has been struggling with it for years and feels like the fun is over, what is the final verdict?
The verdict is that you are not at the end. You are at a beginning. It's a different path than you planned. It's steeper and you have to pack more gear, but the view from the top is still spectacular. You can still work, you can still love, and you can still have adventures. You just have to listen to the vehicle that gets you there.
It changes your pace, not your worth. I think that's going to stick with me.
Me too. It's a lesson for everyone, really, not just those with AI.
If you know someone navigating this new normal, or if you just found this perspective shift helpful, send this episode their way.